Today we will be studying two chapters from the book Honeydew. The first is a story called Glimpses of the Past, and the second is a poem. Now, moving on to the third chapter, Glimpses of the Past. Now, this chapter has a lot of pictures. It's in the form of a comic book, and it is based upon the history of our country from 1757 to 1857. The first picture is those of our martyrs. There is a speech at a function in Delhi, below which is a picture containing all of our martyrs. The martyrs include Bhagat Singh, Mahatma Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose, the last Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar, Rani Lakshmi Bai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, among others. A very well-known speech in which the speech included the following lines: "O my countrymen, let your eyes fill with tears as you recall the sacrifice of India's martyrs." Now, martyrs means the people who died for our country. They are true heroes. The second picture, or the second comic panel, is of the company's conquests from 1757 to 1849. With its superior weapons, the British East India Company was extending its power in 18th century India. Now, the East India Company landed in Kolkata. If you know your history, this is all about that history. So, when they arrived, the Indian princes were short-sighted. One of the kings says that, "Upstart Raja Ba, call the English merchants, they will help me to defeat him." The people had no peace due to such constant fights. Now, what they're trying to say through this comic panel is that the Britishers made the most out of the rivalries that the Indians had among each other in order to dethrone all the Indian kings. As you all know, their famous policy, divide and rule, its foundations were laid right at the beginning. Moving on. The rivalries helped the East India Company and could easily subdue Indian princes one by one. A far-seeing ruler like the brave Tipu of Mysore fought the British till he died fighting. Thank God there's peace in the country now. No more wars and no looting by thugs. It is God who sent the British. Our destiny is linked with them. But later on, the Indians reacted to the conquest in such a way. The white man has killed or dethroned our kings. Now we have become slaves of foreigners. Some kings were not good, but after all, they were of this land. Feelings of nationalism began to rise among the common public as they came to realize that the Britishers were in fact only there for their own selfish reasons. Dethrone means to remove a king from his throne, from his position as king. Now, the British rule from 1765 to 1836 is the title of the next comic strip. Now, religious leaders at that time preached ideas like untouchability and child marriage. Anyone who crosses the seas loses his religion, is what most of the leaders would preach at that time. All the misery in the world is due to women. The truth was that Indians had lost self-respect. The British scorned them. The natives are unworthy of trust, incapable of honesty. True, Your Honor, but I am honest, is what the Indians said to the British. Being merchants, the British wanted quick profits. Their heavy taxes forced farmers to abandon their fields. "But your men are taking all my crop," says one farmer to the British official. "You are still in arrears. If you don't pay next week, I will send you to jail." Arrears means a kind of a loan. The debt that you have to pay to own a particular sort of land. Still, the British invented other methods which gave them more profits. The goods manufactured in England should not have any import duty when brought into India. A good idea. The East India Company's laws began to cripple Indian industries. Inevitably, famines followed. Famines are when there's lack of food, lack of crops growing. Between 1822 and 1836, 15 lakh Indians died of starvation. The British policies ruined the export artisans and their businesses. Since the East India Company was allowing goods from England to be imported into India without any import duty, their cost was comparatively less to the clothes which were made in India, as a result of which people began to buy the goods imported from England, as a result of which Indian artisans began to lose their business. There was starvation at this time during the British rule. Now, a very popular figure, very popular historical figure rather, was Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Now, Ram Mohan Roy was a learned man from Bengal and understood what was wrong with the country. He said, "Let us not despise ourselves. Our ancient culture is great and we are capable of greater achievements. We must first reform our society. Superstitions have been ruining us." He told his wife Uma, "Cows are of different colors, but the color of their milk is the same. Different teachers have different opinions, but the essence of every religion is the same." He was attracted by science and modern knowledge. Knowledge should be practical and scientific. He started newspapers, but the suspicious British stopped them in 1823. He crossed the seas and went to England to see what made the British powerful. Then he told them, "We accept you as rulers and you must accept us as subjects. But you must remember the responsibility a ruler owes to his subjects." So Ram Mohan Roy fought against all the superstitions which were existing in India, all the malpractices such as sati, which have been abolished right now, sati and child marriage. He fought against them, and he also was a pioneer in the fight against the British. There were two factions amongst the fighters who fought against the British, the radicals and the moderates. The radicals believed in violent ways to, you could say, remove the British from their country. They would employ violent methods to do so, while the moderates believed that only conversation and a mutual respect for each other would help the British ease out on the Indian subjects and help make their rule better towards the Indians. Now, the fifth page is titled Oppression, 1765 to 1835. The British continued to oppress Indians. In 1818, they had passed Regulation 3. Under it, an Indian could be jailed without trial in court. All the time, British officers in India drew big salaries and also made fortunes in private business. By 1829, Britain was exporting British goods worth 7 crore rupees to India. Now you can imagine 7 crore rupees at that time must have meant so much. Governor General Bentinck reported back home, "The bones of cotton weavers are bleaching the plains of India." The British prospered on the company's loot, while Indian industries began to die. It was a sad state of affairs, as the British were making the most out of the profits they could make from the cheap labor they got from India and how they could easily manhandle the Indians. Dissatisfaction, 1835 to 1856. Education in India was in Persian and Sanskrit. In 1835, an Englishman named Macaulay suggested a change. "We should teach the natives through the English language." I agree. English education produced clerks to whom the British gave petty jobs under them. Incidentally, it also produced a new generation of intellectuals. We must educate our brothers and try to improve their material conditions. For that, we must convey our grievances to the British Parliament. is what these newly formed intellectuals often discussed about. By 1856, the British had conquered almost the entire part of India. They cared little about the needs of Indians. Our kings have become puppets and have just lost, and we have just lost our old jobs and lands. They are converting our brothers. You only talk, do something to drive them out. By converting means they're converting them to the religion of Christianity. This practice was followed right from when the Mughals came, when the Mughals converted most of the people back in India into Muslims. The same practice was followed by the Britishers who came to India. Now, the sparks 1855 to 1857. Taxes continued to ruin the peasants. In Bengal, the Santals, who had lost their lands under new land rules, became desperate. In 1855, they rose in rebellion and massacred Europeans and their supporters alike. Discontent was brewing in the East India Company's army too. The white soldier gets huge pay mansions to live in servants, while we get a pittance and slow promotions. The Angrez asks us to cross the sea, which is against our religion. Who is the Topiwala to abolish our age-old customs? We must drive out the Angrez. Sepoy Mangal Pandey attacked the adjutant of his regiment and was executed. Thousands of other sepoys revolted. They were stripped off their uniforms, humiliated and put in irons. In irons means sent to prison. In chains. Few Englishmen had cared to understand Indian customs or the people's mind. Oh, proud Brahmin soldiers, do you know that the grease on the bullet you have to bite is made from the fat of cows and pigs? What? The white man has deceived us too. Soon chapatis were sent from village to village to tell the people that their emperor would want their services. Yes, all my village men will be ready. Similarly, lotus flowers circulated amongst Indian soldiers. Death to the foreigner. The masses gave all help and shelter to the patriots. Now, the incident of the grease on the bullet, which was made from the fat of cows and pigs, was what in a way sparked the first war of independence, as it not only affected the Hindu soldiers but also the Muslims, as it was made from the fat of cows and pigs. The pigs are considered not worthy by the Muslims, and the cows are considered sacred by the Hindus, which led to a massive revolt. Also, the other practices when Britishers would send Indians across the sea to fight their wars was also some of the age-old customs they had to break, which led to mass revolts by the Indian sepoys all over India. Now, the final revolt. Then there was a violent outbreak at Meerut. Meerut is a place. The sepoys marched to Delhi. Long live our Emperor Bahadur Shah. The rebellion spread wider. Many landlords had lost their lands because of the British policies and they were sore. The white man's rule must end. Yes, we will help you. The fight for freedom. Many rulers like Begum Hazrat Mahal of Lucknow were bitter. The white man has taken away my kingdom. Popular leaders like Maulvi Ahmadullah of Faisadabad told the people, "Rise, brothers, rise. The Angrez is ruining our land." They joined the upsurge against the foreigner. The people rose everywhere in Bareilly, Kanpur, and Allahabad. Azimullah Khan told Tatya Tope, "We should have Peshwa Nana Sahib as our leader in this war of independence." The patriots pounced upon the British and fought pitched battles all over North India. 80-year-old Kuwar Singh of Bihar received a bullet in his wrist. His dying words from Mother Ganga, "This is my last offering to you." From our freedom movement, S.D. Sawant. This was the state of India back in those days, and we all know the story of how we finally gained independence through the acts of non-violence. The whole world knows about that story, but that story is for another day. Moving on to the poem Macavity, the Mystery Cat. Do you have a pet cat? Have you ever noticed anything mysterious about it? It is not easy to say whether every cat is a mystery, but Macavity is one for sure. What is it that makes him a perfect mystery cat? Well, we'll read the poem and find out. Macavity is a mystery cat. He is called the Hidden Paw, for he is the master criminal who can defy the law. He is the bafflement of Scotland Yard, the flying squad's despair. For when they reach the scene of crime, Macavity is not there. Macavity, Macavity, there's no one like Macavity. He's broken every human law. He breaks the law of gravity. His powers of levitation would make a fakir stare. And when you reach the scene of crime, Macavity is not there. You may seek him in the basement, you may look up in the air, but I tell you once and once again, Macavity is not there. Macavity is a ginger cat. He's very tall and thin. You would know him if you saw him, for his eyes are sunken in. His brow is deeply lined with thought, his head is highly domed. His coat is dusty from neglect, his whiskers are uncombed. He sways his head from side to side, with movements like a snake. And when you think he is half asleep, he is always wide awake. Macavity, Macavity, there's no one like Macavity, for he is a fiend in feline shape, a monster of depravity. You may meet him in a by-street, you may see him in the square, but when a crime's discovered, then Macavity is not there. A poem by T.S. Eliot. Now let's understand what the poem was trying to say. Macavity is a mystery cat. He's called the Hidden Paw. He is the master criminal who can defy the law. Look at the rhyme scheme they have used here. It's AB and AB. Paw rhymes with law. Amongst the first few lines. Now, he is the bafflement of Scotland Yard. Scotland Yard is the headquarters of the London police force. Basically, he's compared the cat to a master criminal who the Scotland Yard is finding difficulty to find. The flying squad mentioned here is a group of police or soldiers ready to move into action quickly. Whenever they reach the crime scene, he has disappeared. He goes on to say, the poet, that there's no one like Macavity. He's broken every human law. He breaks the law of gravity. As we all know, whenever you drop a cat from a height, it always lands on its feet. This is what the poet is talking about over here. His powers of levitation would make a fakir stare. Levitation means floating in the air without support. And when you reach the scene of crime, Macavity is not there. You may seek him in the basement, you may look up in the air, but he is not there. No matter where you look, in the basement or up in the sky, he's not there. Macavity is ginger cat, he's very tall and thin. Now he's describing the cat over here. The cat is tall, thin, and he's a ginger colored cat. You would know him if you saw him, for his eyes are sunken in. His brow is deeply lined with thought. The brow means the eyebrow is always lined with thought. He's always thinking of what next he should do, what next law he should break. His head is highly domed. Dome is like the domes you see, they are basically round in a way. A dome is basically like a bowl, an upside down bowl. His coat is dusty from neglect. His whiskers are uncombed. Now the whiskers are uncombed and his coat is dusty from neglect. Neglect means to ignore. He sways his head from side to side with movements like a snake. Over here, the cat has been metaphorically compared to with a snake. You think he's half asleep, he's always wide awake. He is a fiend in feline shape, a monster of depravity is another metaphor used over here. Now, the fiend means the devil. In feline shape means the shape of a cat. A monster of depravity. Depravity means moral corruption. So he's basically a devil in the shape of a cat, a monster of moral corruption. You may meet him in a by street, you may see him in the square, but when a crime is discovered, then Macavity is not there. The question that comes to our mind is Macavity a cat really? If not, who can Macavity be? It's a good thought. Is he using the cat as a means to talk about some other criminal? Or is this the poem simply just about a criminal cat? What do you all think? A cat, I am sure, could walk on a cloud without coming through. Jules Verne. Which law is Macavity breaking in the light of the comment above is another interesting question. The law he's breaking over here is the law of gravity. What they're saying is the cat is so light footed, so smooth when it walks, that it can walk even on a cloud, and is thus breaking the law of gravity. So, a few meanings: the fiend is the devil, levitation is floating in the air without support, feline is the shape relating to a cat, depravity is moral corruption, and defy means to disobey or resist openly. So, this was the poem Macavity, the Mystery Cat. And before this rather, we read the chapter Glimpses of the Past, two having completely different tones and themes. This was the third chapter and third poem of the book Honeydew.